I've got something on my property that was not one of my biggest priorities when I was first looking, but it's turned out to be one of my greatest assets. I'm talking about microclimates. And microclimates exist in places where you can have somewhat of an anomaly in regards to the climate in a small area. And the size of a microclimate can vary. So I've got a number of microclimates here on my property that are incredible. And it means that I can do things that most people in the region that I'm in can't do because of the benefits of these microclimates. So I want to point out a number of them to you. One microclimate we have here, which is a slightly broader microclimate than some of the others I'm going to show you, is that our property rolls over a ridge. So our 40 acres is sort of a rectangle running lengthwise and wrapping over this ridge. And the top of the ridge is just behind me, just behind the greenhouse there. It goes up about another 100 feet from where I stand here. At the bottom of our driveway, it drops about 300 feet from where I am, and then another 100 feet up there. So we've got about 400 feet of incline from the very bottom to the very top of my property. Now, one thing that's really interesting about where we live, and it's sort of a fact of life if you live in southern British Columbia, is that the prevailing wind from the west coast, it comes from the northwest and it blows to the southeast. And that prevailing wind can be a drag in many different ways because it can make it so that you have constant wind pressure on your crops, and often that wind is cold. But because of the way our main inner zone of our property is situated on the whole property, and it means that we're underneath an above ridge. That ridge is at my northwestern side. So it means that when the prevailing wind comes from the northwest and blows to the southeast, it hits that mountain and blows over us, which means that our climate where we grow here is actually quite stable. And the temperature is more stable. And the fact that we're also, and so that's a broader microclimate example, pulling the lens back a little bit. But then even more isolated microclimates, for example, are the fact that our main ridge, our secondary ridge, if you will, that we spend most of our time in, has a southeastern aspect, meaning that it gets a lot of light in the morning. And because it's more pitched to the south, it gives us a climate zone warmer, a climate zone, an extra climate zone towards the warmer. So we are in a zone 5 here, technically a USDA zone 5, but I would make the case that because of this south aspect, we get another climate zone. So we might actually be maybe a 5B or possibly a 6A because of it. And all of my neighbors in this valley, I'm actually the only property that's up on the ridge. Everybody else is down in the valley. My snow is gone, and you can already see a lot of my snow is melting. And this was a late winter. But I look at my neighbors' properties, they have 10 times more snow than I have right now. And they often will have their snow two weeks to 4 weeks longer than I do. So that's another advantage of microclimates. Now, good topography will also lend itself well to microclimates, especially if you have a good amount of vegetation or trees on that property. So just as we look down here, straight down through there, you can see some deciduous trees. You can see some poplars and some elms and stuff in there. I'm going to be developing a pond down there. I'm actually going to be developing, I hope to develop 3 ponds on my property. I don't know if we'll do it all this year. Fingers crossed, we'll see. But that is already a natural pond site. So it's a draw where snowmelt right now down there is accumulating. And if I were to walk down there right now, it would be significantly colder than where I'm standing right now in the open on this southeast exposed ridge. And that's a great opportunity zone to harvest water. And so a big part of my earthworks plans on this property is to develop these pond sites and send as much snow melt into those ponds as possible. I can't do swales on my property like a lot of other types of permaculture properties can, because my soil is so porous. And so I'm actually better off slowly moving water into a single direction and holding it there. Maybe I have to use pond liners, or maybe I have to use bentonite clay, but the plan is to store that water. And so a pond is another great example of a microclimate that exists. In the summertime, it's amazing because out here, it's quite exposed, and that's really good for growing. That's really good for my crops. It's really good for the greenhouses. But in the summertime, sometimes you want to break from it. And microclimates where you have cooler temperatures or areas that you can do different things in, whether that's growing crops or simply just enjoying the property itself, those microclimates give you advantages. And microclimates are one of these things, like I said before, come from other aspects in the scales of permanence. So in the last number of videos, we've been going through a framework that I use to evaluate property and to determine whether a property is a yes, a maybe, or a no. And in that framework, we've looked at a bunch of different scales of permanence. We started with climate, we went to geography, we looked at water, access and circulation, vegetation and wildlife. Now onto microclimates here. Microclimates are usually created by good geography, good topography that has a dynamic shape to it. It isn't just a flat piece of ground. So good topography and vegetation and wildlife and water, those things will help make microclimates. Now, buildings and infrastructure can also make microclimates. And I actually noticed this a lot in my urban farming days, because I often found that if I could be backed up against a building and had a south aspect, I could create a microclimate. And you can certainly do that. And perhaps you could also make the case that greenhouses themselves are microclimates that we create. And we've got a number of greenhouses here on the property. And so I'm really big on microclimates. And I think the more you can have, the more your property will be enjoyable to live on in the long run, but will also create more opportunity zones for you to do different things with your property, making it a place that you want to spend a lot more time in. So if you guys found that video helpful, smash the like, let me know. And if you're interested in this course we've been putting together, head over to homestead.freedomfarmers.com, and we've got a wait list there. And we'll be releasing this course in April, but go sign up for the wait list and we'll notify you very shortly with more information about the course, when the early bird pricing and release date will be announced, and then the main subsequent release date from there. All right, folks, we'll see you in the next one.